Welcome to PowerTalks, wise words from wise women. I started this series because I encounter some incredibly powerhouse women over the course of my work who have incredible stories and incredible expertise to share. And I have one of these powerhouse women with me today, Pashon Mann. And Pashon is currently a vice president of talent acquisition at Comcast and has extensive experience in recruiting and senior leadership executive positions in a host of companies and a host of industries. So today, I'm going to be talking to Pashon about her experience and how she has learned to overcome adversity with grit and grace. So Pashon, I'm just going to get right to it. You have, over the past few years, been dealing with some pretty unexpected turn of events. And I'd like you to share with us, if you could, a little bit about your Thunderbolt crisis, as I would call it.
Yeah, that's a really great way to describe it. I would say the best way is through a story. I'm going to share with you a very personal story, but will have a huge impact on my message today. I want everyone to envision that they're sitting in a doctor's office. I was actually on a call with a group of ladies because I was unable to take time off to go to a doctor's appointment. In my mind, I believe that.
In your mind, right.
In my mind, I believe that.
Right.
And so
the stories we tell ourselves. Right.
Right, exactly. And so as I sat there in that meeting, I told the group of ladies, hey, I'm going to need to drop because I'm in the doctor's office, and when they call me back, I'll need to go back. And we all laughed about the infinite mammogram that you have to get on a yearly basis, and we hung up. I proceeded to go back, and little did I know that my life would change that day. The doctor, as I went and had my test, came in with the nurse and said, ma'am, we are very concerned you have cancer. And my response was, what? And he repeated himself. And then my very first thought was, I'm not going to cry. My husband had asked me if he could go with me. I said, no, I'm fine. And that was my very first thought. So then I said, well, show me what you're talking about. And they proceeded to show me, which was pretty extensive cancer. I then said, okay. And they proceeded to take me to another room to make more appointments. And the woman was saying, hey, we can get you back on this day to do a biopsy. And I said, excuse me. I said, I have a huge meeting, it's a global meeting where I'm going to have 100 people here in the US. If I have cancer, I need to know today. I'm surprised that she didn't look at me like I was a crazy fool. I guess she was accustomed to that.
Amazing.
Right?
Right.
And she said, okay, ma'am, I will call you. And I then left and proceeded to go to my car, and then I cried.
Wow.
That's 2 weeks, and I am out. I am in chemo, and I began the journey of my life. Let me start by saying that at this point in my life, I thought I was at the height of my career. I was at a large tech firm on the West Coast. I had the best job of my life. I had, to look at me, I was the epitome of health. I was drinking all the water I was supposed to drink. I was exercising.
Right.
I ignored stress.
Right.
I ignored stress. I was believing I was the superwoman, that I was invincible. And so that journey, that was the beginning of really the highlight of my life. I shifted so much after that experience.
That's just an incredible story. And it's funny, that you mentioned stress. We ignore stress and we think we're these super women people. But let me ask you this. What has changed in your outlook since that?
I'm a very different person today than I was when I sat in that office that moment. Everything that I thought was very important to me was taken away when you go through a process like that, when you go through an illness like that. And I was faced with being still and being self-reflective. And I had an opportunity to really be thoughtful about what was important to me, how I was going to lead my life going forward. And I would say the biggest change has been I am kind to myself.
Wow.
Mindfulness, meditation is my friend, is my best friend today. And it's not something that I do when I have time. I integrate it throughout my life. I integrate it in the morning, during the day, before meetings, before I go to bed. I would also say that there's a saying, or I saw something the other day of just how critical this can be, is that be careful what you think and what your mind says, because your body is listening. And that's just so true. And yeah, it's so true. And there's data out there that shows that we are sometimes more kind to others than we are to ourselves.
Yeah.
In our efforts to be excellent and to be great, we are very critical of ourselves. And as that saying has it, your body is listening. And so I think probably number one is I'm just much more kind to myself. I give myself grace. And it's through the actions that I take every day.
You talk about this kindness to yourself, and it sounds like it's a shift to self-care that's really profound, right? Taking care of yourself. What were you doing before that wasn't honoring that?
And that's really what mindfulness and meditation has really taught me. I have essential oils. I have a diffuser going right now. Mm-hmm. It has taught me to recognize when my shoulders are up, when I may believe.
Right, that's stress, right?
Where I may believe, right, that I'm fine, and then I'm like, let me take those down. To be present. We are on almost a treadmill and a grind all the time. And it's just this effort to do the best and to get everything done, that we just don't pause and be still and recognize. And that's what mindfulness has really done for me, is it's made me pause and notice that my shoulders are even up, right?
Yeah.
And it's not perfect. It's not perfect. I have times where I'm really great with it, and then there are times where I fall back into bad habits. But then I very quickly get back on that, get back into what's going to keep me healthy. And so I would say that's probably the biggest piece, and that's what I mean by that. Yeah. The other component that really is my ability to share this story and to talk to others about it and to see a shift in their behavior. I often think to myself, if someone had given me these tools, I probably wouldn't have had the really bad habits that I'd gotten accustomed to doing. And I maybe wouldn't have gotten sick. I mean, to be absolutely honest, once I was still, I said, this is all because I've worked too hard. I've worked all the time. And so I share with others that if you think about your life in terms of buckets of sand, for example, and so you have your career bucket of sand, you have your family, right? You have your spouse, significant other, your partner, you have your health. If you pour all of your sand into your career bucket, which is what I was doing a lot of, right, it's going to be overflowing and it's going to be abundant. It's going to be wonderful and you have the best career of your life. However, you may have a child who's going to misbehave. You may have a relationship that falls apart. You may have your health go south because you haven't been eating or you haven't been filling that bucket at all. So what I share with individuals is you have to balance that. You put a little into this bucket when it's critical for your career, you have a major project, but then you back out. And when you have a child that really needs you, right, or a family member, then you pour into that bucket and then you come out. Then you sit back and you look at your buckets of life. Right. Are they balanced? Right. Are they balanced?
There's the balance, right?
And that's really what you have to strive to do. And I tell folks that, and it helps hold me accountable because I've had people say, your bucket's not, you're overfilling.
Right, you're concentrating too much on one bucket, right?
Right, they'll tell me, hey, listen,
great analogy. Great analogy.
Right?
what struck me about your story, as you talked about the story, was even in the middle of that diagnosis, you were worried about the meeting, right? How did you shift priorities? I mean, think about that, right? You're getting, and it could have been denial in the moment or whatever.
It was, yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy when I look back on it now. It's like, you know, it's almost a blessing in disguise that I got this. I believe I'm a better leader today.
Yeah.
I'm a much better leader. I'm a much better spouse. I'm a much better mother because I'm more balanced. And ultimately, that makes you better at work. If work is your priority, that's great, but I'm better at work.
Right.
And that's what people don't realize. When you're burnt out and you're working all day and all night, you don't take a moment to think, you're not your best. You think you're your best.
No.
You're not. You're not.
Yeah, I tell leaders that I work with all the time about this whole concept of managing your energy versus your time, because we're so caught up in this achieving and proving and pleasing and moving forward. We forget that we are, you know, we are a physical body, and there's a human here, and there's an energy that's within us that if we don't manage that, and if we don't really take care of that, this container, all of the other things we're doing are useless. So yeah, so what a great way to put that one. What amazing impact you're having just by sharing this. But I want to ask you, Pashon, something different. That was a pretty tough thing to go through. And and I'm sure anytime you have a diagnosis like that, cancer is scary. And it's also, you don't know what's happening, whether it's going to come back, etc. How do you maintain a positive outlook despite this ordeal that you've gone through and you're continuing to go through on some level?
Yeah, you know, I think I'm definitely gifted in that I'm kind of wired very positive. People used to say, me and my rose-colored glasses, can I borrow those for a minute? I think some of it is just that's who I am. I can tell you that when I went home that night, I actually videotaped my conversation, my thought process the night that I found out.
Wow.
It was very, very sad, not very positive, right? And by the next morning, I had gone through this process of, all right, it's time to fight. It's time to get up. It's time to get it together. And so, you know, give yourself the day of a pity party and anything you go through. Give yourself grace. And I've just always had the perspective to own it. I mean, I think that a lot of the circumstances that we're in, we believe that we're a victim of those circumstances, have zero control. And so I just decide I'm not going to have that attitude. It's so much in perspective. And I often believe it's going to be okay. In the end, it's going to be okay. And I also try in any experience to figure out, well, what have I learned from this? And in most difficult experiences, I've come out better on the end. I've learned something. And I think that's in every example I can think of. So if I look at my life and I think that way, guess what? Perspective will shift your response to that, which ultimately will shift the outcome to be positive.
Yeah. You know, there's so many different studies on mindset, and it's not that mindset will cure you, but mindset has an incredible impact. What you're talking about a lot is resilience. The resilience is the ability to bounce back from something and some great adversity. Now you talk about that's natural to you. You just do that, right? It's how Pashon is wired. Mm-hmm. Do you think other people who may not naturally be that way can learn that? Or do you think you have to have it? Yeah,
I do. I mean, there's exercises that you can do. I believe it's perspective, it's positivity, it's not giving up is really what it is. And let's say you're wired to that's not who you are. Do something like get up in the morning and write down what you're grateful for every day. Write down the 5 positive things. And if you do that on a regular basis, it's like any other habit, right? Because I think a lot of this is kind of habit. It will start to shift. You will start to believe it. I can think of it in anything that I may have started to do that I wanted to stop doing. If I focus that I don't want to do this anymore,
right,
and think it, say it, write it down, guess what? Over time it shifts. Doesn't shift in one day, right? But over time it will shift. And so I am a believer that you can be resilient if that's what you choose to do.
Just like catastrophizing is a habit, right? When you think of all the negative things that can happen versus the positive things like you're just talking about. Now, what other parting words of wisdom that I haven't asked you do you have to share with us? I know you shared a lot, and I could talk to you all day. I am going to ask you one more question at the end, but what other parting words of wisdom do you have?
Other than new parting words of wisdom, I feel like I like to summarize. I always like to summarize at the end of a talk. You know, what are the 3 things I want you to hear from me today? Number 1 is mindfulness and meditation is your friend. They are your friends. If you've not picked that up, I really, really encourage that you start to pick that up. It makes a huge difference in how your delivery and just making sure that you are kind to yourself. I would say number 2 is balance your buckets of sand. Your buckets of sand, your life buckets. Balance them, enjoy balance them. Please don't pour everything into one bucket. Don't pour all of your sand into one bucket. And then I think number 3 is it will be okay. Things will work out. It will be okay.
Incredible words of wisdom from a very wise woman. Thank you, Pashon. The last thing I just want to ask you, and I know everybody's going to be wondering this as you talk, how are you doing?
I am cancer-free and in remission, and every day is a gift, and I'm going to stay that way.
Thank you so much. You were such an inspiration, like a beam of light that was with us today. So thank you very much, Pashon.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Janet. Bye.